Order, order. We now move on to the fourth debate of today. I call Simon Danczyk to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered the current situation in Bangladesh, and let me say it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Meal. And let me also say thank you to the Minister for attending what I consider to be a very important debate. Let me briefly set out why we are having this debate and explain what I hope to cover in the time available. The current situation in Bangladesh, whilst having some relationship to the war for independence in 1971, is also very much the result of the seriously flawed general election on the 5th of January 2014. That was flawed because the Awami League government were manipulating the result. They refused a caretaker government. They put obstacles in the way of the opposition parties. They made it impossible for the opposition to take part satisfactorily. That's why the opposition rightly and understandably boycotted that election. As we now creep more closely to the next general election, we see that the same Awami League government have become increasingly concerned that they will not win it through legitimate means. So in debating the current situation in Bangladesh, I want to talk about first the consequences of that flawed general election, secondly what has been happening most recently, particularly some of the atrocities that have been taking place, thirdly, what we should anticipate happening next in Bangladesh. Fourthly, why all this is relevant to the United Kingdom. And finally, what I hope the government might consider doing in the near future. There is irrefutable evidence that democracy has now broken down in Bangladesh. I was in the country just a few weeks ago and spoke with trustworthy non-governmental organisations for which I learnt, first, that ballot boxes were now being stuffed with ballot papers for the ruling party in advance of local elections taking place. Opposition candidates were not appearing on the ballot paper when they should have been. Opposition candidates were being persuaded not to stand or to campaign. And there are also concerns about the politicisation of the Electoral Commission. Added to this is the restraint on freedom of expression and pressure on the free press.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will indeed.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's making a very powerful speech. It's only just begun. But is there a vote? Yes. Okay, are we pausing here then?
Order, order. You will have up to 15 minutes to cast a vote, and returning will resume the debate. Colleagues, we're going to resume now. Order, order. Can I just say that we could have lasted another 2 minutes before we resume, but as the interjector and the mover and the Minister are present, I am to bid on Rupa Hook.
Thank you, Sir Alan. As I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted, is my honourable friend aware of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the fact that they are having their annual conference, I think 200 plus nations all gathering in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, in September. And I wanted to ask the Minister really if he can do anything to assure parliamentarians from here who may wish to attend that conference, if we wanted to meet secular or atheistic bloggers, if we could have some assurances of freedom of association, because in light of the terrible recent murders that have shocked the world, I'm not too sure of that. And the fact that my honourable friend was talking about opposition and what may happen next reminded me of this point, which I wanted to raise and make him aware of.
I thank my honourable friend for the intervention that's been made, and I am aware of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association conference that's taking place in Bangladesh, and I think it's a good forum for British parliamentarians and other parliamentarians from right across the Commonwealth to be able to be in Bangladesh and raise some of the concerns that you were also raising. The point I was particularly making was in relation to the press. The murder, torture and harassment of journalists is now well known. Many are fleeing to Britain and seeking asylum here because of the threats and attacks that they are receiving. I will indeed.
I've been to Bangladesh on a number of occasions, and on one occasion during an election period, and they've always been very violent affairs. And I just wondered what it is about this, does he think, that makes it different from those earlier elections?
Let me thank the honourable member for the intervention. I completely agree that politics runs very passionately high in the country, but I think it's really at a stage where it's getting unbearable, and that's some of the points that I'm going to touch upon now. I think we're moving towards a serious situation of civil unrest, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. So I think the tensions are heightened more than perhaps when the Honourable Member was in the country. But let me return to this point. I met Ulla Newman, who came to the UK for the very reasons I've described. He had written, he was a journalist and had written disparagingly about the current government there, and soon started feeling his life was under threat. Talking to him in Rochdale, I could see the stress and fear his experience had caused him. But most upsetting for him was not just that he was now separated from his wife and children, but that he now feared for their lives because they remained in the country. Reporters Without Borders rates Bangladesh at 144 out of 180 countries on its World Press Freedom Index, and talks about how journalists have to be very careful in criticising the government or religion. If all that were not bad enough, on the 4th of May this year, the Bangladesh government announced the setting up of a media monitoring centre and is taking steps to bring social media under similar forms of regulation to those for print and television. Indeed, a draft Digital Security Act provides for the sentencing to life imprisonment of anybody spreading negative propaganda about the 1971 War of Independence, or indeed about Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister's father. The Act also provides for sentencing anybody who deliberately defames someone or hurts their religious sentiment via digital media to 2 years in prison, replicating existing provisions in law. There is also another draft law, the Liberation War Denial Crimes Act, which provides similar provisions. All this is restricting a free press and attempting to quash any criticism of the government. In addition to that, we are now seeing attacks on secular bloggers. In 2015, 4 were murdered. A gentleman called Roy in February, Raman Babu in March, Bijoy Das in May, and Chakrabarti in August. Whilst Al-Qaeda take responsibility for some of the attacks, there is also a group called Ansarullah Bangla Team, who also take some responsibility and have published a hit list, including UK-based bloggers. This year, on the 6th of April, a law student and blogger was murdered by an Al-Qaeda-linked group. The Awami League Home Office Minister's response was simply to tell bloggers to be careful about what they wrote about. On the 23rd of April, a university professor was hacked to death and Daesh claimed responsibility. On the 25th of April, 2 people were hacked to death, including an LGBT magazine editor, and again, an Al-Qaeda affiliate took responsibility. Then on the 30th of April, a Hindu man was murdered and Daesh claimed responsibility. Those from the tiny Shia Muslim minority have also become a prominent target, with processions and their mosques facing attack. Last month, an elderly Buddhist monk was hacked to death. So religious minorities, writers, bloggers and publishers have continued to be attacked and murdered, and this has now had a chilling effect on the freedom of expression in Bangladesh. And the breakdown in law and order continues, with the gross violation of human rights. Amnesty International regularly reports on what they call enforced disappearances, and they clearly hold the security forces responsible. They talk of officers in plain clothes arresting dozens of people, but then denying any knowledge of their whereabouts. A survey of national newspapers conducted by the human rights organisation Ain Salash Kendra indicated the enforced disappearance of at least 43 individuals, including 2 women, between January and September 2015. Of the 43, 6 were later found dead, 4 were released after their abduction, and 5 were found in police custody. The fate and whereabouts of the other 28 was unknown. Human Rights Watch have also criticised the authorities' use of excessive force, including extrajudicial killings of opposition supporters. The Rapid Action Battalion are particularly singled out as being involved in these extrajudicial killings and disappearances. There are now mass arrests taking place, with experts stating these are not so much aimed at Islamic extremists or terrorists, but more at political opponents. If all this were not bad enough, the justice system is seen as biased and being used to silence the government's political opponents, not least through what is called the International Crimes Tribunal. This tribunal has been condemned by the United Nations because it does not meet international standards. It is clearly politicised and being used not to serve justice for crimes against humanity during the 1971 War of Independence, but to provide political results. This is perhaps best illustrated by the fact that both Jamaat Islami and Bangladesh National Party leaders have faced the death penalty following flawed trials at the tribunal. Besides this, allegations are regularly made by the current government against political opponents so that they are tied down in legal battles and constrained by threats of police action and prison. As we steadily move towards the next general election in Bangladesh, the government there appear to be applying more allegations, particularly to those political opponents who are particularly popular. So attempts are being made to use the judicial process to thwart the electoral chances of opponents such as Mr Tariq Rahman and Khaled Azir. It is as though the Awami League are trying to choose their political opponents for the next general election. Indeed, this next general election could well be more corrupt and fraudulent than the last one. So we are observing Bangladesh collapsing into chaos, and a consequence of this is that we are also seeing a rise in Islamist extremism. I would argue that the erosion of civic space, the demolition of democracy, the reduction in human rights are all causing a void to appear which is being filled by fundamentalists. Unhelpfully, the Bangladesh government often denies that Daesh has a presence in the country and has criticised foreign intelligence agencies and independent commentators that have suggested otherwise. This head-in-the-sand mentality helps nobody. But neither does the mentality of the Bangladesh High Commissioner to Britain, who recently went on the BBC Radio 4 Today programme and claimed, to the astonishment and disbelief of the presenter and audience, that some of these extremist murders are actually being committed by the Bangladesh National Party. This can only be bettered by the Bangladesh Home Office Minister, who recently blamed Israel for some of the attacks. Let me be clear, it helps nobody to deny there is a problem with extremism in Bangladesh, but it is actually deeply corrosive and haunting to play party politics with Islamist terrorism, as the High Commissioner did. Britain and Bangladesh have very strong ties. We trade very heavily between our countries. We rely heavily on the garment industry. We have the largest Bangladesh diaspora in Europe. We enjoy the cultural experience that Bangladeshis bring to Britain. Indeed, we rely heavily on Bangladeshi chefs to cook our national dish, chicken tikka masala. And Bangladesh relies on aid from Britain too. Bangladesh relies on the remittances that are still being sent home. And we share space and understanding within that great institution, the Commonwealth. But I have grave concerns for the people of Bangladesh. The problems seem to be escalating. Human rights abuses are dramatically increasing. State violence is becoming extreme. And I am worried that the country is steadily slipping towards civil unrest and potentially civil war. That is why, in my final comments, I would like to suggest further action from our government and also ask the Minister what more he thinks can be done. Let me say I accept that the Foreign Office have recently designated Bangladesh a human rights priority country, but I still think more pressure needs to be applied. What more can the British government do to press Sheikh Hasina's regime to start holding free and fair elections and move towards a free and fair general election? Does the government believe that some of our aid budget to Bangladesh is going into institutions, such as the Electoral Commission, which are clearly politicised and favour one party over another? If this is the case, what should be done about it? Does the Minister have any concerns that weapons or equipment from the UK may be used by the security forces to suppress political activists, restrain political liberty and reduce freedom of expression? And finally, does the Minister not think it now appropriate to consider sanctions against Bangladesh, perhaps and at least refusal of entry to the UK of those in that country who are clearly responsible for some of the abuses that we are discussing? Let me finish by saying that I know there will always remain a very strong bond between Britain and Bangladesh. Indeed, our countries, our relationship allows us to be critical friends, though I think the time has now come for the British government to be a little more critical and a little less friendly to the current Bangladesh regime. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Question is that this House has considered the current situation in Bangladesh. I'm going to call other members who wish to participate, but I'm just going to indicate them to the fact that we've got about 3 to 4 minutes before we move over to the Minister, who will give his response to the mover, and then the mover to wind up with the debate. So if more than one member is standing, I'm just indicating to them, if they're to be fair, there's limited time for each of them to make a representation. Rupa Hook?
To intervene.
Stand.
Sir Alan, it was my intention to simply make an intervention on the case of the bloggers and the fact that it is the Commonwealth Charter, which the CPA abides by, that ensures the fundamental freedom of association. So I was particularly interested to know from the Minister if representations are being made from HM government to the government in Bangladesh to ensure that right, that fundamental right, come September when the conference takes place. But I mean, seeing as you've given me the floor, my honourable friend mentioned some comments about the Bangladeshi diaspora, which I'd like to echo. I'm one of 3 members of Parliament in this House of Bangladeshi origins, and it's a rather depressing portrait painted by my honourable friend, the member for Rochdale. I believe it was George Harrison who did a song called Bangladesh, What a Terrible Mess. And I think some of the sentiments that my honourable friend have expressed seem to give weight to this opinion, although it was only expressed in popular song. It is a country that has been wanting on many fronts of democracy, human rights, freedom of association, as we've said. So I'm looking forward to hearing the Minister's speech.
And of course, the member is a senior politician in this place, and she knows the rules of debate in this place, where German debates and Westminster Hall debates are timed, and they're strict timetables. And of course, the mover of the motion is the indicator, and his indication is that he wants the Minister to reply to the questions he's posed. And it's interim to that, and then if any time is left, to grant it to other members. I think we've got to move on, because we're approaching the witching hour when the Minister has to be called. Minister.
Thank you, Sir Alan, very much indeed. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Rochdale on securing this important debate, and I commend the commitment he has shown consistently to Bangladesh, both as a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group and as an MP representing British nationals of Bangladeshi heritage. I also thank other honourable members who have made an intervention, and as the Minister for Bangladesh, the Minister for Bilateral Relations with Bangladesh, and as the Minister for the Commonwealth, I will try to address as many of the points as I can in the time available to me. The relationship between the UK and Bangladesh is strong, as the honourable gentleman said. That relationship is enhanced, and British society as a whole is enriched by the diaspora community. As a close friend of Bangladesh and fellow members of the Commonwealth, we care deeply about what happens there, both now and in the future. We want Bangladesh to develop into an economically successful country, and one that maintains its Bengali tradition of respect and tolerance from people of all faiths and backgrounds. In June last year, this House debated Bangladesh against a backdrop of political unrest, the brutal murders of bloggers, and allegations of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. Since then, there have been more attacks against minority groups and on those who hold views counter to traditional values and beliefs. Many of these attacks have been claimed by Daesh or groups affiliated to Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, as has been pointed out. There has also been pressure on opposition parties, including the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and on dissenting voices in the media and civil society. Sir Alan, peaceful, credible elections are the true mark of a mature, functioning democracy. All political parties share a responsibility for delivering this, and the United Kingdom will continue to engage constructively with all parties in Bangladesh and with international partners to work towards this end. It is generally recognised that the shrinking of space for democratic challenge and debate can push some towards extremist alternatives, and I am deeply concerned that the recent appalling spate of murders is becoming an all too common occurrence. The Prime Minister, my right honourable friend, the member for Witney, discussed these concerns with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, on the 27th of May in Tokyo, highlighting that extremist attacks risk undermining stability in Bangladesh. I also raised these concerns with the Bangladeshi High Commissioner on the 24th of May, and our High Commissioner in Dhaka regularly discusses these issues in meetings with the Bangladeshi government. I welcome the government of Bangladesh's commitment to bring those responsible for recent extremist attacks to justice. We have also made clear in public and in private that justice must be done in a manner which fully respects the international human rights standards which Bangladesh has signed up to and which, as members of both the Commonwealth and the UN Human Rights Council, it has pledged to uphold. Mass arrests and suspicious crossfire deaths at the hands of the police undermine confidence in the judicial system. Investigations must be conducted transparently and impartially, irrespective of the identity of either the victim or the alleged perpetrator. Anyone arrested should be treated in full accordance with due process and Bangladeshi law. It is also important to explore the root causes of the attacks involving any international links. As a vibrant, modern and rapidly growing democracy, we urge Bangladesh to protect and promote freedom of expression as one of its core values. Prime Minister Hasina has repeatedly extolled the secular, tolerant nature of Bangladesh. Her government must be unequivocal in protecting the rights of all citizens, including those who express different views or lead different lifestyles. The victims themselves should not be blamed. As recent events in the United Kingdom, France, the US and elsewhere sadly show, Bangladesh is not alone in having to face the scourge of extremist violence. All countries must stand together to combat extremism and terrorism. This is not a challenge to be faced in isolation. We can and will do more to engage with the government of Bangladesh on areas of shared concern. These will include counter-terrorism, counter-extremism, and the promotion of human rights for all. At the same time, our development programme, still one of our largest, continues to address some of the root causes, such as poverty and economic marginalisation. To conclude, the threat of terrorism and extremism is one that affects us all. It should not be faced alone. It is incumbent on us all to work together to promote tolerance and acceptance. The protection of human rights is a core value of the UK and the Commonwealth. The Honourable Lady for Ealing Central and Acton asked about the forthcoming meeting later on in the year of the CPA in Bangladesh, and I urge the new Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, Baroness Scotland, to visit Bangladesh as soon as she possibly can in order to assess the situation there for herself. Sir Alan, we will continue to encourage the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, to deliver on the commitments she has made to tackle terrorism and to protect human rights, and to do so in a way that is compliant with the rule of law and due process. This is in both our interests. Bangladesh has a long-term vision of being a peaceful, prosperous and developed nation. The UK shares that aspiration and wants to be a friend of a vibrant, stable and economically successful Bangladesh. Thank the Honourable Member for Rochdale once again for the opportunity to debate these issues today, and I thank all other honourable members for their contributions.
Simon Danczak.
Just very briefly, let me thank the honourable members for making the contributions and interventions that they have, and let me thank the Minister for his response to the issues that I've raised. There's no doubt about it that all of us want to see solutions to the problems that are obviously occurring in Bangladesh, and I'm pleased to hear that the Prime Minister spoke to Sheikh Hasina as recently as last month. I still have some concerns. We are quickly approaching CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of State meeting in a year or two, which will be held in London, and I would hope that more progress is made in Bangladesh before we get to that stage. But I still think, finally, that we're left with 3 questions that the Minister still needs to answer. Is any aid being used in a partisan way, any British aid being used in a partisan way? Secondly, is there any use of weapons and equipment being used to suppress political opposition? And thirdly, at what stage would Britain consider sanctions to Bangladesh if the situation doesn't improve? Thank you.
Can I just suggest to the honourable member that in the course of his deliberations, when he goes over Hansard tomorrow, he might actually take the view expressed by Ms Hook and contact the CPA and warn them that this matter came up in the course of the debate, your debate, and ask them to make sure that all precautions are made in the event of the conference taking place. The question is that this House has considered the current situation in Bangladesh. As many of their opinions say aye. Contrary no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.